Hello and welcome to my NCTM Boston Regional presentation called Let's Talk About It, How to Foster Meaningful Math Talk Between Parents and Children. Just a quick little bit about myself. My name is Anastasia Betts. I am the wife and mother of 7 mostly grown children, and I have spent the last 25 years working in education. I have been a teacher, a coach, administrator, curriculum director, and a curriculum developer. But currently, I'm the VP of Curriculum Planning and Design for an education technology company called Age of Learning. I'm also currently a PhD candidate in Curriculum Instruction in the Science of Learning program at University of Buffalo, SUNY. And my research emphasis there is on early childhood mathematics teaching and learning. So, how I first became interested in this topic. As I mentioned, I work for Age of Learning, and you might be familiar with some of our products. One of our most popular and most well-known products is abcmouse.com, which is a website that features thousands of learning activities for children. And in the last 4 years, we started developing a new program called Mastering Math, and it focused on teaching number sense and operations to preschool through 2nd grade children. But so obviously, as we're building these programs, my responsibility is to help develop the curriculum for these programs, which was how I first became interested in this topic. But how I really became interested in this topic was when I started doing research into how kids learn math and why they don't learn math. I encountered this statistic that many of you are probably familiar with. It's from the NAEP, and it shows that over 60% of 4th grade students are not proficient in math. That was somewhat shocking to me in some ways when I saw it. I remember back when I was in the classroom, many of my kids were not coming to me as a 4th grade teacher proficient, but I thought perhaps it was just the area that I taught in. I didn't realize at the time that it was a nationwide epidemic. So why is this a problem? Well, I started doing a lot of research to figure out why so many kids are failing to achieve in mathematics. And I found out a few important things that I'm sure many of you are already familiar with, so I'm just going to summarize them. First of all, we know that math achievement in school leads to success both later in school and out of school. Higher graduation rates, higher rates of enrollment in college, and better paying careers later in life. We also know that because of tons of research that's been done, that early childhood mathematics is very important. In the most recent research that's been done, we have discovered that early mastery of key math concepts in preschool or at the onset of kindergarten is a predictor of later school success. And more importantly, advanced counting skills such as count on, count all, count forward and backward from any number, or counting beyond 10 were found to be the most predictive of later math achievement in 5th grade and in middle school. But something else that emerged in the research that I did was that there are vast differences in math knowledge when kids start school. Basically, there's already a gap when kids begin school, and I know this will come as no surprise to the teachers out there. Some kids start with very strong math skills, and other kids start with almost none. So, and not only do they start with varying levels of skills, not all children are able to master these requisite skills by the end of kindergarten. And it's thought that though the research in this area is very young, it's thought that factors in the home environment impact how ready the child is to learn math in school, what math foundational skills they're coming to school with. And it seems from the research that's been done thus far that these deficits in math knowledge seem to affect some populations more than others. Another thing that emerged from the research that I did was that parents matter a lot. Parent-child interaction on math-related topics positively impacts student achievement. And the other sort of sad thing that came of the research is that even though the interaction is very important, parents tend to interact very little with their children on math-related topics. And in fact, the research shows that most parents have gotten the message that literacy is super duper important. And so they will read bedtime stories to their children and they will talk to their children, but very few of them have gotten the message of just how important mathematics is. So a lot of my study lately has, my research lately has focused on the home numeracy environment. And that is, the home numeracy environment really encompasses all of the values, beliefs, knowledge, background, experience, the physical resources, the practices, and the attitudes in the home, primarily of the parents, since they're sort of setting that tone. And currently, I'm in the middle of a pilot study for my dissertation. And one of the things that I've done so far is I conducted some in-depth interviews with 23 parents of 4 to 5-year-old children. And some interesting things emerged from those interviews. Parents largely believe it's their job to help prepare their children to be ready for math in school. They want to be involved, but they feel very intimidated by the quote-unquote different way that math is taught in school. And by different, you can infer that they mean well, you don't even have to infer. Some of them actually said this, that Common Core confuses them or that they're scared of Common Core, but they may not even know what Common Core is. They just know they've heard things from other parents, or things have gone viral on Facebook, and they feel very afraid or very intimidated by the math or what they perceive as the math being taught in school. They want better guidance about what the best activities are to do with their children. And they feel like they need ideas and suggestions that fit in with their busy and hectic lifestyles. And something else that was really important that emerged out of these interviews that I did was that many parents have misconceptions about what math is as far as it applies to their young children. So parents need our help and we need theirs. So the things that we want to help them with, or the things that parents are asking for, not only in my research, but in the research, the literature review that I did, is what is accessible? What do they feel confident that they can do with their children? What about the time? Do they have the time or the energy to do it? Do they have the materials to do it? And do they feel like they know what to do with their kids? And that's where the strategic guidance comes in. So I want you to think about this sentence and maybe even finish it in your mind. Most parents think that helping their child get ready to learn math in kindergarten means, so you can pause here and think about what that is from your own perspective or your own experience. Well, what I found, and this is in the literature as well as the study that I'm in the middle of, most parents think that helping their child get ready to learn math in kindergarten means learning the count sequence to 10, and sometimes or rarely beyond 10, but mostly to 10. They think it means being able to help their child be able to recognize numerals 1 to 10, and sometimes even write them, and also sometimes beyond 10. It means doing math flashcards, and sometimes it means counting small sets, usually between 5 and 10, and very rarely beyond 10. So I want to ask you, the viewer, to consider some activities and think in your mind, imagine whether or not you think this activity is math. So these were some of the questions that I asked parents as well. Is this math? And I showed them a photo of a child setting the table. I showed them photos of jigsaw puzzles and board games, and I asked them if they viewed those activities as math. And the interesting thing that came of this is that a lot of parents didn't view these activities as math, and almost none of them viewed setting the table as math. And when asked if they would ask their child to set the table and why, they said, "Oh yes, I might ask my child to set the table, but it was more about responsibility and chores than it was about math." And the same thing with jigsaw puzzle. Well, not the same thing, but as far as jigsaw puzzles and board games go, they looked at those as like fun activities, but they didn't recognize the underlying math that that was involved in those games. Another example, I'm sorry, I don't have the video in here yet, but another example was folding laundry. Does this seem like a math activity? And of course, parents saw it as a chore or something that built responsibility, but they did not view it as a math activity. So most parents don't realize that math means things beyond counting and recognizing numeral, things like talking about position in time and space. When I say talking about position, I mean ordinals like first, second, third, but also relational words like next to, behind, above, below, bigger than, smaller than, near, far, shorter, taller, etc. And also, they didn't realize that math meant noticing or describing the characteristics or attributes of something, or sorting things according to their attributes. A lot of parents did realize that looking for and making patterns was mathematical, but they didn't really do any kind of activities like that with their kids. They didn't do a lot, if any, comparing activities, or some did some measuring activities, mostly relating to baking or cooking, but it was very few. And while many parents recognize counting forward within 10 as a mathematical activity, very few thought about counting backwards or counting beyond 10, which is the last bullet there. But we can help them with this. How can we help them? How can we make it easy? Or to go back to my previous slide, how can we help them by making suggestions that make interactions accessible, that keep in mind they don't have a lot of time, they don't have a lot of materials, and they need some strategic guidance. So as I thought about this, I kind of went back to my days in the classroom and thought about how I used to give out I called them menus at the time. I would send home a menu of activities, and I would ask for homework that week, the parents and the children to pick activities off of this menu to do. So I started thinking about that a lot, and I wondered, okay, what can I do to help parents make better choices about what they want to do with their children as far as math goes. And also time is limited. I'm going to go back to this slide for a second. Time is very limited. So early childhood mathematics is very important, and parents don't have a lot of time. So how can we make the time that they are spending with their children engaging in math activities, how can we make it count? And one of the things that I was thinking about is like, how can we get more of these kinds of things into their repertoire, as well as other math skills like early algebraic thinking, patterns, measurement, comparing and categorizing and all of that kind of stuff. And the first thing that came up for me was parents need to spend more time talking to their children. It's the language that they use with their children. Parents can be so much more strategic about supporting their child's math learning just by being more conscientious about their language. And so I developed this strategy called the 4 C's. And the first point on the list is converse. So I want to talk a little bit, well, actually, let me go through the first 4. So there's 4 things in the 4 C's, obviously. There's converse, count, compare, and categorize. And the reason that we sort of came up with this strategy was because we wanted to give the parents something really easy to remember that could move them beyond just the simple counting and count sequence activities and numeral recognition activities that they were sort of stuck in. So that's, first of all, that's why we came up with the 4 C's. It was easy to remember: count, converse, compare, categorize, and could hopefully help parents better think outside the counting box. So let's start with converse. As we get into converse, I just want to share one particular study that I came across that was amazing in its startling discoveries. And this was a study done on children who were 14 months, and then it followed them until they conducted observations on 44 preschool children. They started observing them when they were 14 months old and continued until they were 30 months old. And then when the children were 48 months old, when they were 4 years old, they were assessed. And what they found is from the observations were done of the parents and the child in a naturalistic setting. And what the observers were doing is they were tracking the words used between the parent-child dyads. And what they discovered was that in those hours of observation, the total number-related words ranged anywhere from 4 words used to 257 words used. And that's across 7 hours of observations done across this sort of 16-month period. So what was shocking to me about that was that across 16 months, at least in one dyad, that parent and child only shared 4 number-related words during observations. That seemed like a really, really small amount. Now, granted, we don't know what kind of other words were being shared, but to think that only 4 words related to math were shared during those observations is a little bit disconcerting for me, especially knowing how much language very young children need to be exposed to in order to learn concepts. So what they found when they assessed the children at 4 years old is that cardinal number knowledge at 4 years old was highly and significantly correlated to both the variation and the frequency of the number talk that took place during that 16 months between the parent-child dyads, and that the variation and frequency of number talk was a significant predictor of later number knowledge, meaning the more the parent used number-related words with the child, and the more varied number words the parent used with the child, the better the child did on later measures of cardinal number knowledge. It's not really surprising, but what is surprising is just how little parents are talking to their kids about number. So what parents should be doing within the converse category of the 4 C's is they should be talking a lot. There should be a lot of frequency of number talk between parents and children. And they should also be talking about a lot of different math-related things for variation. We know that young children learn the language of math, very young children learn the language of math largely through conversation, through just talking about things. So it's really important to help parents understand that they need to narrate everything. And it's okay to give your child the play-by-play, meaning, this is what I'm doing right now. Oh, I am putting on my left shoe. I'm putting on my right shoe. I'm waiting for you in front of the door. I'm waiting for you behind the gate. I have 7 marbles, you have 4 marbles. Let's count them all together. So it's really, really important. The talk is really important. And so here, are some parent tips that if you were giving tips to parents, you could help a parent know how to talk to their child. Just asking questions. How many cars do you see that are blue? This can happen as you walk or drive around town. What patterns do you notice on the stoplights? What shapes can we find on the way to school? You get the idea. Talk to your child about the passing of time. We need to be at school by 8 and it takes 10 minutes to get there. That means we need to leave in 5 minutes. All right, so count is the second C in the 4 C's. And this is the one that parents actually do the most in. But parents tend to focus more on the recognition, naming, and writing of numerals and the count sequence, and usually just to 10. But counting involves so much more than just numeral recognition and count sequence. It involves the count sequence, yes, which we know as the stable order principle, but it also involves counting objects, one-to-one correspondence, and labeling the quantity, which is cardinality, also labeling numerals, and also labeling position order. And probably some other things that I'm not even thinking about. So how can we make it easier for the parent? We can give the parent suggestions like say the numbers forward and backward within 20, count forward beyond 10 to 20 or more, and create counting collections of 5, 10, 20, and then beyond. Focus on counting all, and then counting out, and then counting 2 groups together, and then counting on. Those are those more advanced skills that we were talking about earlier that lead to success, or that have been shown to predict success later in 5th grade. So just some tips for parents. Things that easy things that they can incorporate into their lives. They can count steps. How many of you have a step tracker app on your phone? You can count steps. You can have your child, or parents can have their children help them count steps. Of course, always singing counting songs, 5 Little Monkeys or 1, 2, Buckle My Shoe, or playing board games or even card games. Especially games with dice also promote skills like subitization, which is great for really young children. But also we need to really reinforce with parents those advanced counting skills. Saying their count sequence beyond 10, counting forward and backward from any number, and one of the most advanced counting skills, which is counting on one group of items to another group. For example, I have 5 grapes. If we add your grapes to mine, how many do we have altogether? And then have the child count forward from the total of the first group, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so the next C is compare. So being able to describe the attributes of an object or a set of objects is really an important foundational concept in math. And it's something that most parents aren't thinking about at all when it comes to doing activities with their kids. So comparing provides key opportunities for introducing and developing math-related language. It also provides opportunities to talk about attributes like shape, size, color, and position, whether that's temporal or spatial. And comparing activities also need to include examining quantities, like is this group more, is it less, is it the same as the other group? So some activity ideas to share with parents are things like have a conversation about squares and rectangles, or any other shape you want to, squares and triangles, triangles and circles. But rectangles and squares, as you know, provide a really great opportunity for critical thinking. For example, what makes a rectangle a rectangle? What makes a square a square? How are squares and rectangles the same or different? Another really great idea for a parent-child activity is guess the hidden object, where you use position and relational words to help the child find the object. For example, the hidden object is smaller than the TV but bigger than the DVD, or it's behind the couch but in front of the table. And then, of course, a great comparison activity for quantities is who has more. And this is actually really good practice for the standard, the kindergarten Common Core standard, which is about more or less or the same, and using a matching strategy to find out who has more or less. So break out the snacks, I grab a handful, you grab a handful, and then we line them up to see who has more or who has less, or if they're the same. And once kids know how to compare, basically to notice the attributes of an object or a set of objects, then they can begin to categorize. So categorizing helps to deepen their sense of attributes through critical thinking. And it's really sort of the foundational thinking that underlies understanding what makes something part of a set or what makes something not part of a set. So we really do want kids to sort and to categorize things according to their attributes. And also it's a foundational piece for understanding patterns, like what is the pattern, what goes next, why does it go next. So some examples of that are, these are just examples from everyday life that hopefully kids are being exposed to these things anyway. But for example, loading or unloading the dishwasher or putting away the dishes is a great sorting opportunity. Where do the forks go? Where do the spoons go, and why? Also laundry, inviting the child, parents who invite the child to help them fold and put away the laundry. We often stack clothes according to their attributes, shirts with shirts, socks with socks, etc., which is a great chance for conversation between parent and child to describe what makes something a shirt, or what kind of shirt is it, which stack should it go in, and why. And a similar thing can happen with groceries. Most families have systems for organizing the food in their fridge or their pantries, and inviting the child to help put that food away into the right place is a great opportunity for them to exercise their compare and categorization skills. So as I mentioned earlier, I used to give out menus when I was teaching to my as homework. I would send the menu home and I would say, okay, you need to do at least one activity in each row and one activity in each column, sort of like Sudoku. And so they could pick whatever they wanted. They could pick any activity from any column or any row, but they had to do at least one in each column and one in each row. And as I gave some thought to the 4Cs, I thought, if I was still in the classroom now, my menus would be so much better than they were in the past, because I can be more strategic too about how I'm inviting parents to engage with their children. By using the 4Cs, I can ensure with a menu like this that parents and children who are doing the homework are actually engaging in a wide variety of activities that are going to support the math learning of my very young students. So I just, that was my idea for how I might use the 4Cs with my parents, but I would love for you to think about how the 4C strategy might work in your practice. What might you do with it, or how could you use it to help parents really remember to do more than just count, sequence, and numeral recognition, but to recognize that there are so many other opportunities where they can get so much more bang for their buck with their children's math performance and achievement. So how does this work? I've been doing all this research, and how is this currently informing my current work? So one of the ways that all this research that I've done is informing my current work is through the creation of parent dashboards. As you know, or as I mentioned, we've been building this game, this digital math game for the last 4 years called Mastering Math, and it's geared towards preschool through second grade students, and it teaches number sense. But because we recognize that parents play a huge role in the math, the development of their children's math knowledge, we have been building parent dashboards that not only provide information about their child's progress, but also educate the parents. So if you see on this slide, over here we have a how to help section, and the how to help is the activity that we want parents to do with their child. And over here in this section where it talks about the game, we actually have information about why is this game important, what is it trying to teach, so that we can help parents who do feel confused, and that they also might feel overwhelmed, or they may just see their kid playing a fun game and wonder how that's math. So we're doing our part to try and educate parents a little more about what the math is and why it's important, and how they can engage in similar activities with their children. So the big question I have is, how can we build better outcomes for students through better parent engagement? And my big 4 takeaways from not only the research that I looked at, but the current research that I'm doing, and also the experience that I've had in the past as a teacher, I came away with 4 big takeaways that I wanted to share with you today. The first thing is, make it easy and convenient. Parents won't engage in activities if they feel like they are onerous or difficult, or even make them feel like they don't understand the math. So we have to make it easier and more convenient for them to engage in math with their children. I put forth the 4C's strategy as something that we can use to help parents remember and move beyond just simple counting activities. And I also want to encourage you and all of us to help parents find the math in everyday living. There are so many activities that parents are already doing, and perhaps even involving their children in, like folding the laundry or setting the table or doing the dishes, that are or can be made mathematical with just a little bit of conversation. And finally, we want to really reinforce the idea that just helping their children know their numerals 1 to 10, know the count sequence 1 to 10, being able to recognize, or even being able to write the numerals, that's not enough for kids to be successful in kindergarten. It's not even the minimum. So if we really want our children to be successful, and we really do want to solve that 60% not proficient problem, we need parents' help to go beyond just rote counting and numeral recognition. So that's all I have to share today. I just want to thank you, and I'm grateful for you coming to my presentation today, and I wanted to let you know how you can find me. I am on Twitter and Instagram, and I have started a Facebook page where I'm going to be posting this presentation and other things as they come up, called Parent-Child Math Talk. So I would love to see you join me there and join the conversation. Thank you.